Hello, everyone, and welcome to this special show here on the channel. As everyone will know, and we've covered it in several videos already on this channel, Reading Football Club, a club formed in 1871, are in crisis, with the recent disqualification of their owner, Dai Yongge. There has been several people who have registered interest in purchasing the football club. And today we are speaking to one of those. So, without further ado, it is a pleasure to welcome onto this show former Wycombe Wanderers owner, Rob Couhig. Thank you for joining us on this show, Rob. How are you doing?
Glad to be here. Looking forward to it.
Excellent. And thank you. We really, really do appreciate you joining us. Now, before we do talk about the situation at Reading, I think this is quite important to cover off. As everyone will know, you were the owner of Wycombe Wanderers Football Club.
Yep.
Could you give us a brief on what you inherited when you arrived there, the success, and how the club looked when you departed?
When I arrived, I got there on a Wednesday. We shook hands on the deal. I asked them what they needed. They needed £500,000 or they were going to go into administration.
Mm-hmm.
I lent them the money, which prevented it. We then had to do a deal. We got the deal worked out. It had to be approved by the fans. And it required a 75% vote of the supporters. They had 800 of them. And if they did not vote, it counted as a negative vote. Nonetheless, 4 months later, we got 96% of the vote affirmatively, and we took over the club in February. When we got there in June, they had, I want to say, either 5 or 7 players under contract. They had a terrific manager with Gareth Ainsworth. But they had really suffered because they had not had the necessary infrastructure improvements. We said about my philosophy is that you build the value of any enterprise, but particularly sports enterprises, by working on those things you can control. Never been a big believer that you go out and splash a lot of money on getting the highest paid striker. Rather, spend the money, make sure your scoreboards are right, your bathrooms are clean, your food's good, and you want to bring the fans back. I'm pretty proud of the fact that in our 5 years, they had the best 5 years. Each year was one of the 5 best years that the club ever had in its 135-year history. We got promoted to the championship. We barely got relegated by a point, but we thereafter contended. We created a B squad or developmental squad that began to produce significant revenue for the club after the second year. We ran it on an economically sustainable basis. That's always been my hallmark. We don't spend money we don't have. And we create something that's lasting in its deal. About a year before I sold the club, I had some medical issues, and I'm 75 years old. I didn't think I was going to want to fly back and forth because it's a long journey from my house in Louisiana, and I was going over every 3 or 4 weeks and spending a week. So we began the process of finding the next good owner. And my standard when I look for a new owner is to find somebody who's better than myself. And I don't do that humbly. It's just a fact that the role of an owner, whether it's in the EFL or any other sports organization, or basically any business, is to make sure that continuity is not just remains level, because if all your goal is to remain level, then you drop back. So we were very fortunate that we found a fellow who was interested in the club. He and I became friends, and we struck a deal. He asked me to stay on until the end of the season. Actually, he asked me to stay on in perpetuity as the chairman, but ultimately my health improved. I had sold my club, And so I began to look for something else. So when we left, the club was in fantastic shape financially. It had a great on-pitch performance. It had been enhanced in all of the metrics of fan appreciation, and scoreboards and LED boards and all those things. We were most proud of the fact that we created Wanderers TV, which took the iFollow setup that the league provides and really enhanced it and turned it into a major revenue producer, which allowed us to build our club. So, we were happy with it and happy enough with it that I had done the same thing in minor league baseball, AAA, which is roughly equivalent to your championship in soccer or football.
Yes.
And we had won the championship of the championship. And we had top 5 attendances in the United States during the period of time I owned it. And so, I love sport. I love business. I love the business of sport. So when I left, I thought I was done. We have a successful law practice here. We're involved in various other businesses, and I thought I would come back to St. Francisville, Louisiana, and that's where we would hang around. But the opportunity with Reading was presented to me, and we looked at it, and we thought we could make a go of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was highly publicised prior to your interest in buying Reading Football Club. Your former club, Wickham Wanderers, wanted to purchase Bearwood. Now, big question here, Rob. Were you approached by anybody at Reading Football Club trying to sell off that asset?
Yeah, I don't. Let me give you what I know of it,
Mm-hmm.
because this all happened. And look, I could be off a month or two. March, February, January, maybe even in December.
Mm-hmm.
Mikhail, my then successor owner, his goal was to have a big academy. And so they came to him and said, hey, will you invest and buy our academy? Not our academy, our training grounds. And they were desperate. And so he struck a deal with them. And as the chairman, I had to sign the deal. And I'm not putting it on him. I thought it was a great deal for both players, both participants. The folks at Reading never got a chance to actually hear the plan, which was a sharing arrangement that would have taken a lot of burden off of Reading in terms of the economics. They would have gotten, look, there are people who wanted Dai out, and so they didn't want him to have any money. And I understand that now, but, we weren't out there hustling the deal. It came to us. It met all of Mikhail's objectives, and so he said, "This is good for the club. What do you think?" I said, "I'm going to be here another 3 months. Of course, it's good. Let's do it."
Who was it at Reading Football Club that approached you?
I don't know, and I'm not trying to hide them. It came to me through Mikhail as a kind of done deal, and my function became sign for it. Well, first review it and see if it's a good deal. Did I agree with it? But the economic terms were already done. I agreed it was good for the club. I thought it was good for Reading, candidly, because I was told that they were going out of business any day now, and if they didn't get finances, so we signed on.
Well, back in 2024, you were given exclusivity to complete the purchase of Reading Football Club. What were the initial conversations with the club like?
It came to me through another guy who had the actual initial conversations with Reading about the purchase. Leo Rifkin from Chiron, which is a sports ownership organization, had the discussions. They struck a deal. Leo came to me and said, would you be, by now I had said, I'm out at Wickham, but I'd be interested in finding something else. And I believe that Leo had been part of the consortium that originally helped us find Mikhail. Although we didn't hire an agent or anything like that, more that he helped Mikhail find us. So he said, would you be interested? And I looked at it and I said, sure. And here are the terms and conditions. And we shook hands and off we went. And then we had the letter of intent that I inherited, and that we went about the business of trying to make it happen.
When did you see the situation at Reading, and did you agree the final sale price with the club, and did you have the funds ready to complete the takeover at the time?
Yeah, it's more than did we agree.
Hmm.
The lawyers for the seller, for
Yeah,
Reading, drafted every single document.
yeah.
They sent them to us, they sent them to the minority shareholder, and we signed them all up, and we had them signed for a week or 10 days. I was in the infamous trip where I went to the Purple Turtle.
Purple Turtle. Yep.
Yeah, I was sitting there because everything was done.
Hmm.
Money was in the lawyer's accounts. It was just waiting, and it wasn't like we were waiting for a decision. It was more, it should be happening. And we went over there for 3 days
Hmm.
waiting for it. And finally, I went home because it hadn't happened. And they said, we'll get back to you. And 10 days later, they did and said, here's your money back. And incidentally, that was my 5th trip I think I had made with the given understanding from their lawyers, the deal's done.
Hmm.
All we need you to do is do 1 and 2 things. They asked us, the management asked us to go to the game so that they could excite the fans. And look, I'm a ham, I enjoy it, but it's not like I needed it to fulfill my life to go to a game and act like I'm an owner. I had done that successfully both in soccer and football before. We thought we were helping the club. And then for whatever reason, and they've never given me the courtesy of a phone call, they sent me the money back I had lent.
And there was no communication at all, and nobody even bothered to get in contact.
Nope. Ultimately, they did,
Hmm.
but it wasn't. It was to ask that it was funny. I mean, this was badly done. We have security over everything because we lent a lot of money. So we have a mortgage on Bearwood. We have security on the stock of the club. And so nobody said, hey, we're going to send you your money back. Will you give up your security? Because we would have said no. Instead, they just sent the money back. And and incidentally, their lawyers quit after they sent the money back, which you can read into that whatever you want, and sued them. Or I'm sorry, y'all don't use the term sue, made a claim against them.
Yeah.
That was ultimately resolved. So about 2 or 3 weeks later, Dai Yongge sent me a letter and said, hey, would you release? Oh, in the meantime, in fairness, the lawyers had sent me a package of release forms, right?
Hmm.
And before I had a chance to really review them, I said, I'm not going to sign them. They disappeared in the sense that they were the proprietary product of the law firm. They send this to us on a DocuSign sort of service. And when they quit, they went away. So they don't even exist. If I wanted to release them today, there's no way I could. The documents don't exist.
Out of interest, do you still hold the liens over the club?
Yes.
So, does this mean that Dai Yongge cannot liquidate Reading Football Club because you hold that?
Yeah. That's actually, you're the first person to ask the right question. I'm not being patronizing, but everybody has sort of missed the point that if he were to try and go into administration,
Hmm.
he can't because I could bar it today. One of the things that I have been reluctant about giving up the security is first, I want the security because I think I have a legitimate claim. And
Yeah.
look, the claim has never been the goal. I've always wanted to own the club. This club should be continuing to be promoted from the championship, not worrying about looking over its shoulder, it's going to slide back. It needs huge infrastructure improvements in the stadium. If you've been there, you know that.
Yeah.
And the staff overall needs some help. So, but my position, and confirmed by the lawyers, is I have the stock.
Mm-hmm.
I can sign it to myself any day. I have not, because I don't want to exacerbate anything. But if in fact he were to announce he wants to go into administration, it's our understanding that I would be a creditor in that administration, and the single largest creditor other than Dai, and would be able to take the stock that he has pledged to me, convert it to myself at that point, and keep it from going into administration. So I'm not going to blithely give it up, even though the frustrating part is that people only know half the story, and they accept whatever the club tells them as gospel, without saying these are the same people who have told me X in the past and it turned out to be Y. So, yeah, good question.
One thing I want to come on to is the academy at Reading Football Club as well. The current first team, which the majority is made up of former academy players, has performed incredibly well in League One this season. How impressed were you with the setup that the late Eamon Dolan and his team created?
It's one of my frustrations is that there's been this unfair knock, and I don't get into all the social media crap, but people are saying, oh, Couhig wanted to get rid of the academy. That was started by some people internally, I suspect, at the Reading Football Club, who, for their own reasons, don't want me to own the team. And perhaps it's because we require discipline in our organizations. We require chains of command. We want to know what you're spending the money on and why. The academy is obviously a good source of it. Let me divide it up in my mind. It has a great utility for the club.
Yeah.
It has a marginal utility in terms of economics, in the sense that just because you sell Elise this year doesn't mean that you've paid for all the sins of the past. So you have to be very careful about it and be very prudent about it. And so because I've evidenced that, some people say, oh, he must want to kill the academy. Furthest thing from the truth. But the academy has to function as a business unto itself. One of my issues is that people in English football have a tendency to say, what we really need is a really rich guy to take our club and take it as far as he can, and then we'll get us another rich guy to do it.
Yeah.
My suggestion to people who believe that is look at the predicament you're in today. Mm-hmm. You couldn't ask for a guy to spend more money than Mr. Dai did. I think he did it with trying to be a good owner. For all I know, I have no reason to believe he just wanted to waste his money. But I think that there were lack of institutional controls, and so some of those people needed. Did I think the academy needed some? Every aspect of every business I've ever gone into, we start and look at and take it apart. And incidentally, that process is continual. We do it in every business once a year. Some businesses once a week. The beauty of football, of course, is you get to see what happens on the pitch. But I have not a unique, but a different feeling about it. To me, it's not what happens on the pitch on Saturday or Tuesday night. It's, are we building the right model for what we want to do?
When you arrived for discussions regarding the takeover at Reading, the club did have a very successful women's team. What were your plans for the women's team if you had taken over?
We looked at the women's team, but I would be lying if I told you that that was our highest priority. We knew that they had issues. We didn't know how bad the issues were. We got a phone call one day saying, hey, the women's team's going to go out of business. What do you want to do? I said, let me look at it. We brought in a woman who's a very wealthy person who wanted to have her be in effect in charge of that as her part of the investment. She and her daughter, and in fairness, the guys who were putting it together, they didn't know what we wanted to do. And they said, do you want to do 10%? And I'm sure I probably said, we don't do 10%. We want to be in a place where we can do it. And the whole thing, in my mind, came together and fell apart in 2 or 3 days. Even the final day was supposed to be a Friday. We're working around the clock to try and figure out what we can do. And on Thursday morning, I got a phone call from the guys saying, hey, it's over. Now, remember, I'm 6 hours behind you guys. So, in fairness to them, they may have thought I would be further along than I was. And most people know I'm up very early over here so that I don't lose much time on the Brits.
Let's go on to the recent news as well. So on Friday, the 21st of March, you did win your case against Dai Yongge. Prior to the court hearing, did you make any attempt to get in contact with the club or Mr. Dai?
We made a suggestion of a way to resolve it. A couple of alternatives. Never heard from them, but that's not unusual.
Fair enough. One part of Dai's case was that your legal challenge was preventing the sale of the club. This was thrown out by the judge. Was that always the case?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a contrived excuse. By, again, I'm not sure Mr. Dai is the mastermind, the puppeteer on all this, as much as people within the organization are sort of doing a self-protection thing. They, for whatever reason, I think I'm a nice guy, but they may not want me there for whatever their reasons are. And so anybody who knew anything about commercial laws, the judge said right from the first moment, said, when you go to sell your house, you have a mortgage on it. You have to figure out what you're going to do with it. Doesn't mean that you're prohibited from trying to sell it. Doesn't mean you can't go out and find a buyer. It means at the time of the sale, you have to do something with it.
Actually, that leads quite nicely on to the following question, which is your claim is for £12 million, which needs to be put into an escrow account. Now,
No, but keep going.
If Dai Yongge does not put some money into the escrow account or refuses to sell the club, were you to win, could you potentially repossess the club?
I gave you credit for a good question earlier, so now I'm going to give you a demerit for a bad question because
Sorry.
That's not your fault. It's a complicated issue. The escrow, if we were to go that way, is not something that can readily be done. If you do an escrow, a lot depends on the terms of the escrow. I've never seen Mr. Dai say he wants to put anything in escrow. And let me just say this. The mere fact that lawyers say that he wants to do it means nothing to me because lawyers have said it. He was going to sign the deal to sell it to me. And he disappeared. These lawyers who are now negotiating for him are the same ones who hid from everybody the fact that he had been disqualified by the EFL, and it only showed up on the night before we went to court because they basically were compelled to turn it over as a matter of judicial prudence. So I don't know what the escrow, I don't know what it'll be. I understand from my lawyers, they sent a suggested agreement yesterday or this morning. I've actually been doing something else, and we'll look at it tomorrow over the weekend, and we'll make a decision on it. But what is going to be paramount in my mind is that we're not going to be an impediment to the sale of the club. That's for sure. And the judge pointed that out. But I am not going to give away anything until everything else is done, because I don't believe everybody's got it done. It is amazing to me that the whole following says, oh, he must be doing this deal with this other investor. I haven't seen anything from the EFL saying that the guys, and look, I'm sure he's a great guy and I'm sure he'll pass, but I haven't seen anything. Maybe you have. I haven't seen an announcement by anybody saying we've even signed an agreement to purchase. I know this, that to do an agreement to purchase on this deal is complicated. Remember, you have Bearwood, which is the properties, the training ground. You have, it is heated for the underground through an LNG system on another piece of property. So you have to get a license to get the LNG because that's owned by a separate Dai company and they don't give that away. So you got to negotiate that. You have to come up with a way to deal with the stadium that's owned by a British Virgin Island company that has a lien on any proceeds that that company gets that distributes anything to Mr. Dai. I had to set up 2 companies in the British Virgin Islands. Cost me a lot of money, which is why I got a little irritated. I'll use that word, a gentle word. About all of this stuff, you have to figure out, the parking. Nobody even talks about he doesn't own the parking. I did a deal for the parking last year if I had taken over, because you have to do it. I don't think they have a deal there, and somebody owes money for this year's parking. You have to do a deal with the minority shareholder. I had that deal in hand. The money was in the bank. Those guys were ready to go, and it wasn't easy. You may remember I talked about you had to get people from 13 different time zones to sign up. It's the minority shareholders. One of them's in Thailand, one's in Germany. It's kind of cool, actually. But, so long way, in my estimation, from this thing being done. I saw today somebody, Harvey Nibbs' agent has filed a winding up order because he hadn't been paid. There are lots of unpaid bills out there. That's one of the reasons we had set up an escrow account when we went to close, so that we could pay all those known and a small amount for unknown things. Anybody who comes in there, the moment they start turning it over, is going to say, uh-oh, I've got to make provisions for this, I got to make provisions for that. So maybe the guy's going to buy it, maybe he's not, but I've seen no indication that he is.
Would you still like to buy Reading Football Club, Rob?
Absolutely. And not just because it has the potential. It's going to require lots of money because you got to redo the stadium, in my mind. I think you got to make it the place where people go to be friendly and nice and clean and exciting. I think you have to do some serious maintenance work on the training ground. Again, it's a beautiful place, but it's like your house. If you don't take care of it, things happen. I think that this club, with the right leadership, instead of averaging and struggling to average 10 to 12,000, ought to be in the 17 to 20,000. It ought to be. It shouldn't be in League One, and the reason it shouldn't be in there is it's such a dominant place with a good fan base that you ought to be able to produce enough good players that you ought to be safely mid-table in the championship and contending and butting ahead to get in those top 6 or 4 in the championship with a chance of promotion. Not easy, but it's the type of challenge I love. And for me, it's the challenge of doing this. And people sometimes say, oh, he's just in it for the money. Let me say this. Anybody who buys into soccer for the, quote, money is making a huge mistake. Now, we've been fortunate. We've done it. But it is because we put a lot of work and time into it. And anybody who buys this club, who thinks that they can run it from afar, and by afar, I'm not saying you have to move from Louisiana over there, but you need to be there a solid week to 2 weeks a month. You need to be on the phone every single day, and you need to put a lot of sweat into it.
Whilst you'd like to buy the football club yourself, would you assist Rob Playtech or another buyer in the purchase of the club should any offer progress for the benefit of the club and its fan base?
I don't know. I mean, what would my assistance be? I don't know Playtech. I don't know if he's really the guy. Everybody, all of you guys in the media assume he is because y'all buy what the club tells you. Have you talked to Mr. Playtech?
No.
To your knowledge, has anybody?
don't know a single person who's
Can
spoken
you
to him.
tell me, and look, I don't know the guy from
Mhm.
Adam. Can you tell me when he left the Danish club, was it in better or worse condition than when he bought it?
Mm.
How about the Italian club? Nobody knows. And
No.
so, and look, as far as I know, he could be God's gift to English football. But nobody does anything in terms of due diligence about him, because it's always easier to say, my gosh, if we could only get the guy I know nothing about, that is the answer to all my problems.
Final two questions for you, Rob.
Yeah, because I got my dog, man. He's going to be upset with you. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I do apologise. Who would you say has put Reading Football Club, a club which you rewind 20 years was one of the best run in the country under John Madejski, in this mess?
I don't know. It is not my practice to point fingers at people
Mhm.
about the past. I am a guy who looks forward and likes to do things for the future.
And of course, there is segments of the Reading fan base. I've had a little look on social media, and it's very, very divided. If you were to take over at Reading Football Club, how do you feel the fans would react, and how would you aim to get them back on side?
There will be a coterie of people who will not be happy. There will be a coterie of people who will be happy. And I suspect the great majority will take the rational approach of, why don't we see what the guy does before we make an opinion?
Mhm.
My approach to ownership is hugely open communications. So, in specific answer to your question, the first thing I would do upon taking it is meet with the staff and the coaches and the players. And the second day would be to invite everybody who's written one of those mean or vicious tweets or whatever social media in, to look them in the eye, have them come in, because I've discovered something. Most guys are very, very courageous when all they have to do is sit at home and write it. But I want to answer any questions. Fans may have some ideas I haven't thought of. And look, at Wickham, I think the reputation was very open, very communicative. And it's not because it's because it makes for a more enjoyable environment. Even if you and I disagree as to who should be playing the left winger or whether we should have played a
Mhm.
5-4-1 or whatever, uh, that's fun. That's sport. And look, the English get very aroused and excited by it, but that's legitimate. And I don't mind if you get mad at me because I haven't fired the manager. After all, we lost 2 games. And or matches, excuse me. But yeah, so I think that people will come around or not.
Well, Rob, thank you so, so much for
Yep,
joining me on this recording. I really, really appreciate it. And all the very best, whatever you choose to do.
good, and good luck to you guys with your podcast.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.
And thank you, everybody, for joining us on this show. Like I say, hit the like, hit the subscribe, hit the bell button below, as it does always help this channel to grow. We will cover more details about Reading as the situation evolves. But hopefully, there will be light at the end of the tunnel. And hopefully, that you found this video a very, very interesting watch, and also full of further information with regards to the current process. From myself and everybody at this channel, we wish Reading Football Club all the very, very best with regards to the sale, and whichever way it falls, we hope that we do not lose a football club now or in the future. Again, thank you for tuning in, and we'll speak soon.